Okay, guys, you're not gonna believe the story I just read. I'm just gonna start reading it just so you guys can know like how bad it is. Anyway, this is Otherworldly Beings by Story Arc. It is a tragic, dark comedy adventure. The description of the story states Twilight Sparkle finds a strange book in the library, and one spell happens to catch her eye. Little did she know that that spell could summon up a twisted experiment from another world. What will happen to Equestria with this nigh unstoppable killing Messian on the loose? I think already you can see the problem with this. This story is rated mature, though nothing mature really happens yet. So let's dive right in. Chapter 1. Now, this story starts out with what I think is supposed to be an author's note, but it looks more like an author's paragraph. I'll go ahead and read it. Fair warning, if you wish to jump straight into the story, go down till you see Chapter 1. This only covers what the story is, what a few things are in the story, and a little, most likely needed, information on myself. Now with that little disclaimer out of the way, this is a grid mark, though no cupcakes or rainbow factory. No, in fact this story has every few times that gore comes into play. However, it is still dark and minorly malicious, which still go against what MLP is as a whole, so this still falls under the gruesification of grid mark. It only gets worse from here. Now, I'm a writer, and I make some of my own stories as well, no not other fanfictions, full-fledged stories made from the ground up, and this will be my first hand at applying my hobby to fanfiction, so I hope you enjoy it. Now to cover some of what will happen because my writing is fairly advanced some younger readers, and yes, children will read this, even though they shouldn't. You did it as a kid, I did it as a kid, they're doing it too. I will try and aptly footnotes to explain words, events, or ideals that you may have missed or cannot comprehend. To elaborate what I mean, if there is a complex story arc that is happening, # will appear next to it. Of course, the number symbol will be a real number in the real thing, and at the end of the chapter there will be a numbered list that will match up with the given number and explain what is going on. This will be story heavy after all, so expect this to occur fairly often, though even if you are a very literate person looking into some footnotes could be fairly useful, such as one in the first chapter that blatantly says what I'm actually saying when giving the setting, so you'll find quite a few of these footnotes useful. Lastly, at the moment I do not have a working copy of Microsoft Word and I'm dyslexic as well. That means I cannot spell well to simplify it for those of you who do not know much about mental disorders, so forgive my bad spelling, I can't really help it. Now let us begin. I wish I could stop there, but it keeps getting better. Or worse. Chapter 1, Necromancy is never something to play with. And right here is supposed to be an author's note again. Now before I get ahead of myself, let's start with the events leading up to this story. And then it goes to the actual story. Twilight Sparkle, about a month ago, found a strange book crafted of what seemed to be fur in the very back of one of the shelves in the library. On the front of the book, a star encased in a circle. 1. Curious as she was about this book she had never seen before, she couldn't help but open it. Unfortunately, the text found inside was in a language that she could not understand, though it was close enough to English to make a few words out. 2. From it enough to understand what was being said anyway. That was all one sentence. This is a spell book, thought Twilight, but I've never seen any spells like this. She continued to think as she looked through the book until she stopped at an image that caught her eye. It was of a lightning bolt that struck the ground, and under it a strange two-legged creature that Twilight had never seen before stowed on the top of the smoke that the bolt had created. Looks interesting, Twilight thought as she attempted to read what was written next to the pictures. Oh, Twilight said. This can only be done during a storm, and aside from casting the spell, I can't figure out anything else about the spell. It still looks interesting, though. I suppose I could wait till the next storm that the Peggy C planned to happen to preform it. Twilight continued on, determined to find out what the spell did. Fortunately enough for her, the next storm would happen in a month, not that long a time, but for Twilight it was agonizing, edifying. The mysteries of what the spell could do and what that anomaly was gnawed at Twilight for that month, and now she could find out just what the thing in the book was, though the big question for us is would she like her answers? Nonetheless, tonight was the night a big storm was scheduled tonight by the Peggy C ponies, and that meant Twilight could finally get some competent sleep at night again. Hey, Twi, what's got you so happy you look about as giddy as a school pony? Ponyville's top cowboy Applejack asked. Q&A. There's a storm coming in tonight, Twilight answered as she pranced up and down as if channeling the spirit of Pinkie Pie. You're happy for that? Applejack asked, puzzled. I'd be downright upset. Well, you do have to do a lot of preparation to do for your fields because of it, Twilight said with a chuckle. Hee but I have my reasons. You see, I found this spell that will only work during a storm, and the question of what it would do has been really eating at me. Well, that's nice, but I gotta go, Applejack said in a rush, completely ignoring everything Twilight said past fields. And as the barn pony ran off, Twilight merely shook her head with a smile on her face as she walked toward the library. Later, just before the storm, Twilight had taken out the strange book she found and a few things she needed to preform the spell, which was a bowl of specially mixed herbs, a long black cloak for her to wear, and a small vial of blood that she had squeezed out of a wound on her hoof that she had purposefully cut open. 3. Finally, I'll find out what this spell is, Twilight had thought as the first bolt of lightning crashed. Meanwhile, in a far-off world, what can only be described as a bipedal for apocalypse was wreaking unbelievable amounts of havoc. This thing had the likeliness of a Homo sapien. 5. Stood on two legs, two arms with hands that have opposable thumbs. However, this thing was definitely not human. Scales were randomly scattered in patches all about its body. Large claws with green tips jetted from its fingertips, a long tail with sharp plates on the top stretched from the end of its spine. All its teeth were as sharp as incisors. 6. And lastly, it had large scaly wings jutting out of its body just beneath its shoulder blades. This thing, as we'll call it for now, had no reasons for doing what it was doing, except for a large hunger that it preferred to satisfy with the meat of a human, and for the most part it had no troubles accomplishing this. Armies attacked it, all they could, but sadly to no avail. Infantry only aided its hunger. Helicopters' blades were easily ripped apart by its ungodly strength, and as were tanks, whenever one came at it, it merely ran up, ripped the cannon right off the tank, and used what it had gotten its hands on as a bat to smash all still left. Missiles? Nothing. Its body loved the heat. Bullets? Too slow to keep up with it. And bombs? They only angered it because they destroyed its prey. Now it was heading for the biggest and most heavily protected city on its planet, and as it approached, several armed forces came pouring out of buildings just to immediately be mowed down by it. Soon following the men were several land-based vehicles, such as armed jeeps, and they too quickly fell to the hands of the beast, and far of in the middle of the city, two men were watching this disaster unfold. "Nothing we do is stopping this thing," one said. "Have hope, my friend. There must be some way to stop it," the other said back. "But that's just it. If we could kill it, it would have it a long time ago," said the first man before getting tackled to the ground by the other, for if he didn't, they'd have been hit by the treads of a tank set flying at them. However, just then what some could describe as a miracle happened. Without even a cloud in the sky, a bolt of lightning came down and struck it, leaving only smoke where it once stood. Now back with Twilight, the storm was just about over, and Twilight had already casted her spell, but it appears that nothing happened. A large bolt of lightning hit the Everfree, but that is the only thing that happened. Shocked Twilight had rushed toward every window in the library and even looked out the balcony to see if anything had happened, but nothing was there. Twilight did everything that the spell needed, but nothing. "So I was losing sleep over a dud this whole time," Twilight thought. "Well, at least I can stop thinking about what that spell does now." And of course Twilight, being as smart as she was, fully believed this thought before checking the lightning that struck the Everfree, for there, where the bolt had touched the ground, stood it. Though something was off about it, large masses of dark and light energy spewed from it, but it didn't notice. Instead, it noticed the dramatic change in Kinnery. "Where did this forest come from?" it asked. "Where did this city go? And more importantly, where can I get something to eat?" Now on to footnotes. 1. A star surrounded by a circle, or as it's more commonly known as a pentagram, is the sign of Satan. When you see one carved on a book, it normally means it's a book on necromancy, a magic cast normally known for spells that raise the dead or their forms of black magic. 2. The text that the book is written in is Latin, a form of language that most languages known today are derived from, which is why Twilight had trouble reading it. Q&A. The reason I didn't type Applejack's dialogue in her normal accent is because I hate the stereotypical Texan accent. You want to know why? I live in Texas, and the only one I know with even a minor form of that accent is my 80-year-old grandmother. Not to mention I'm kind of opposed to the writing of accents in literature. Describe that they have an accent and that should be good enough. Now let me actually get a word that exists so I can understand what they're saying before I get to the such and such accent line. 3. Most forms of black magic require blood of some form or another, namely goat blood, because goats tend to represent Satan as well. But to keep continuity with the actual show here, I made Twilight get blood from herself, because it really wouldn't make sense if a pony in this nice, magical, and kind world just killed everyone they walked by, would it? Number 4. Bipedal, meaning two-legged, derived from the Latin words bi, meaning two, and pedal, meaning foot or leg. 5. Homo sapien, the scientific word for human being, also derived from Latin. 6. Incisors are the sharp teeth in animal jaws. These are also known as fangs or canines. And the last author's note. Now, though at the moment it does not fit half the things I put up for it or the description, keep in mind it's chapter 1. This is a big story. Things need to happen little by little. Otherwise, there'd be too much being choked down your throat at once, so let it take its time to get to the actual things that were put up about it. So far the story has 0 thumbs up and 6 thumbs down, and I think I know why. I'm sorry you're dyslexic, but this grammar, syntax, sentence structure, everything about this is grammatically incorrect. Now the story itself may seem interesting, the grammar kills it. See, that's why I cannot get into the story, and I find it bad, but hopefully I've entertained you people by giving you a reading of this bad story. Maybe you find it like a so bad it's good kind of a vibe. So anyway, that was Otherworldly Beings by StoryArc. I will give a link to the story in the description, and from there you can do whatever you want with it. You could show it to your friends, and so forth. So, good night, or morning, or afternoon, wherever you are, and what time it is. And I need to investigate what that sound was.